Nate Parker's The Birth of a Nation is the first film in a long time that truly compelled me to see it in theaters. Everything I saw about this film inspired me. I had to see it on the big screen.
You're a special boy, Nathaniel. Study hard here.
Oh, thank God.
When it comes to cinema, I have always loved films that showcase heroism in the face of true adversity. So when I saw the trailer for a film about a slave who led a courageous rebellion, especially one shot so beautifully, I was hooked.
What you think you're doing, boy? I asked you a question.
Beware of false prophets who come dressed in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravening wolves!
I had, however, never heard of Nat Turner until I found out about the film. But it was not surprising when I read more about who Nat Turner really was and what he did. It also made the film's lukewarm reception even less surprising. Nat Turner was a preacher who led a violent revolt against slave owners and whites in South Virginia, which began on August 21st, 1831. His legacy has been tarnished, and the reasons for his actions have been skewed by a culture that irrefutably supports, cultivates, and protects racism like a religious institution. The Birth of a Nation is not entirely historically accurate. No film can be. Although it paints a far more accurate picture of who Nat Turner truly was than any other piece of art before it, which to me is the point of this kind of film. Nate Parker set out to show who Nat Turner was as a person and what motivated his actions. Most films about history take liberties to tell a better story. It is seen as acceptable so long as the broad strokes stay true to the essence of history. However, this film actually had no choice in taking certain liberties with history. There is very little documenting Nat Turner and his actions to any great detail. So little exists because those in power did not want his story ever known. They wanted to create a villain. They wanted to control the narrative so others would not follow Turner's example. There was a book written about Nat Turner in the 60s called Erroneously, The Confessions of Nat Turner. It was based on little fact, yet won a Pulitzer for the author. He wrote that Nat's main reason for the revolt was out of a desire to be with a white woman. What Nate Parker has done is to painstakingly recreate the time in which Nat lived to understand what drove him to his actions. In that, it succeeds and then some. Seeing the brutality of the era, the callous dehumanization that occurred on a day-to-day basis, it makes Nat's actions very clear. He did not make up anything that takes place on screen. Everything Nat experiences in the film are the experiences he would have actually had, and the basis for Nat's characterization is factually accurate, which is more than some other films have done with their representations of historical figures. Looking at the film, you would never know Nate Parker was a first-time filmmaker. He really understands how to structure a story, and that film should be beautiful. Even the most vile acts are shot with such beauty. It may seem odd to think that during some of the film's savage scenes, yet it all lends to just how exquisitely this film was made.
Lord spoken to me. Visions of what's to come. A rise of good against evil.
What are we gonna do?
We'll fight.
Every scene was so meticulously constructed. There were several times Nate Parker could have gone over the top with the level of violence and cruelty on display. The subject matter even makes that approach acceptable. Yet this is a film that does not relish in its display of violence or action. It could be called a revenge film on some levels, and it may be a revenge film, but it is never shot like one. This is a character study at its core. Having said that, the film is effective for the same reasons that any great revenge films are. It is paced well, starting with Nat as a boy leading quickly to a scene filled with tension and brief but graphic violence. The film then slows down, and while we are reminded of the repugnant nature of the times, we are also shown that hope, happiness, and inspiration are also present in the worst times. The latter portion of the film does feature a very satisfying battle sequence. However, this is not an action film. Even the climactic battle is over fairly quickly. Few films have shown both the restraint and when to hold back on unnecessary violence, but also the courage to know when it is most vital. Every character in the story is fleshed out and portrayed as a person and not just a caricature. With two major exceptions, one being Jackie Earle Haley's role as the film's main antagonist. He plays a vile and very two-dimensional slave catcher that has a few run-ins, both direct and indirect, with Nat, which is a major catalyst for Nat's rebellion. Some may see this as an unnecessary liberty with history, as that character is not based on a real person, at least not in the traditional sense. Nate Parker chose to use that character to represent every slave catcher Nat would have known. He is the personification of the worst kind of evil from that time. The other exception is a boy who joins Nat's rebellion. This character is actually far more crucial, as the boy's sole purpose is to show the effects of Nat's rebellion. These choices made the story all the more effective and cinematic without hindering the history of the story in any way. Nate Parker wisely chose to not focus solely on Turner, but to show the people who influenced him and to show the world in which he lived. Nat's grandmother is perhaps one of the strongest female characters I have seen in film in many years. She could have easily been written as a cliché, yet she, along with Nat's owner Samuel Turner, have been greatly defined as more than just the wise old grandmother or the evil slave owner. Aja Naomi King portrays Nat's wife Sherry, and her performance was breathtaking. The chemistry she shared with Nate Parker made their scenes together mesmerizing. Nate's performance as Nat Turner does carry the film. While he is surrounded by remarkable talent, Nate Parker's talent as an actor cannot be understated. His performance was never grandiose, it was always subtle. He could show great strength and confidence, but also show pain so genuinely. The Birth of a Nation takes its time introducing you to the characters, giving a grand and horrific view of the time period, all to showcase the story to vividly guide you through the narrative like the epic poems of the classical age. I love the use of Nat's nightmares in the film. It showed how well researched and authentic the film is. While some may balk at the strange imagery, it makes sense in the mindset of the time. A film like this could showcase just the mistreatment of African Americans, yet we see even in those times they could find joy and love. It is done subtly, and few films have presented such an authentic look at a part of history that most want to simply forget. Bravely, the film does show that even when the slave owners thought they were being kind, the culture still made their actions both patronizing and in some cases worse than being merciless. It is a very interesting and startling use of contrast that is rarely seen in films dealing either with this subject matter or films of a similar thematic nature like Braveheart or Gladiator. While the subject matter may make the film uncomfortable viewing material for some, it is as well made as a film can be. No scene is overscored, and when the music is used, it is rousing and evocative, but never overpowers the film. There is a montage towards the end of the film where the choice of music could not have been more effective. No shot lingers, and every frame of the film had me absorbed in its provocative use of history that we have been led to believe is totally irrelevant today. Nate Parker's skills as a filmmaker are immense. He has a true love for the craft, but it was his sheer devotion and passion for Nat Turner's legacy that made the film so incredible. Anytime an artist is driven with that kind of passion, it always shows on screen.